Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is our concepts edition for the week. I'm Devin Bedoni of Like and Precision.
And I'm Uriel Eisen of Austere Manufacturing.
Gonna hit our quote.
And our quote: "We now accept the fact that learning is a lifelong process of keeping abreast of changes, and the most pressing task is to teach people how to learn." From Peter Drucker.
Pretty sure this was a Toyota Kata.
It sounds like a Toyota Kata for sure.
Yeah. I like that. I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about how, like, just kind of like what our job is and the ongoing, I don't know if it's like a refrain, but like your job is not to like make stuff. Your job is to improve how to make stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think, kind of looping back to just the fundamental thing of like learning and dealing, and the lean principle that all of this is to deal with changes in the marketplace and survival of the company and all of that.
Well, I think there's that. I think also, like, as the leader of the organization, like, you're almost even one step above that. Not above like better, but above, just like, you're not, like teaching people how to learn. That way their job can be improving things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than you doing the improvements even. Like,
yeah.
I forget which chapter in Toyota Kata. Actually, I think it was in Designing the Future. They were talking about building, it was Designing the Future, building a learning organization and building a learning culture.
Uh-huh. And
that if you provide the answer to people, you've now built yourself into the process. And that really, you have to like ask them questions till they figure out how to solve the problem. And that was really driven home to me. Like, right after listening to that, I went downstairs and there was an issue with the sewing machine. And I've been working on sewing machines for a bunch of years. And so they're pretty complicated. I mean, you can't exactly see their state because as they stitch, it moves fast and the thread is soft. And anyway, and so I solved the problem, and immediately was kind of like, okay, now like our process essentially for anything really significant happening on the sewing machine is where's Uriel, right? And so I haven't like built any confidence or any ability really in the team to deal with those issues. Yeah,
totally. I just think also it can, I think, be overwhelming for people to think about. Like, the idea of constant improvement is overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so kind of bringing it back to the concept of just learning and like your job is just to learn is a little more palatable, sort of.
I think so. I think this also on a slightly separate topic is like there's a big emphasis on not having a production focused culture.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like this is the alternative. This is where you're trying to plug in instead, is a learning-focused culture.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you had an issue, that's fine, as long as we learned from it, and then that loops into and informs the improvements.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Quote.
Yeah, it is. And it's such a hard thing. We've been struggling with it quite a bit, the shift away from production mindset while still making stuff.
Right. Well,
it's hard.
Yeah, I think the time horizon thing is a big one. I've been thinking about that a lot. I think we talked about this last week, but we have a lot of orders that need to ship, and it's hard to make the call of how much should we be messing around right now versus just like, we're just gonna buckle down, as it were, and ship stuff. And we have another week till stuff has to be in the mail to kind of make it in time for the holiday, or week and a half.
Yeah.
So like, if you're looking at 10 years from now, that's just a very different game.
Mm-hmm. Super different.
Like, when I sweep the floor now because it needs to be swept, I could do a whole thing of like preventing it from needing to be swept and learning about where the dust is coming from, et cetera.
Yeah.
But really, we just need a clean floor for the next week and a half.
Right.
And so that should not fall off the list, but it also maybe isn't the time to address it.
Yeah.
But then the counter argument, of course, is that you're sort of eroding the culture of like, we always address things.
Yeah.
And we always think. And anyway.
Jidoka.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mythical Jidoka.
How do? Yeah, this kind of like ties into the thing I had written here for a topic for this week was like, does training and employee development count as continuous improvement? And this dividing line between what is your kind of like core business function and what is improvement.
Right.
Well, also if like improvement is your core business function, as some people would say, like,
oh God,
then you have a snake eating its tail.
Right.
But, yeah, it's kind of like, I feel like we're putting a lot of work right now into training and developing new skills in the team and in the organization. And sometimes it doesn't feel like improvement efforts. At the same time, it's like we are definitely doing this to improve our business capacity and capability. And so it's kind of an open question I had. It was like mulling over this week is how does that fit into this kind of continuous improvement structure?
If you do have an hour a day set aside, can you fill that hour with teaching people skills?
Yeah.
And you can kind of argue that two ways. My feeling, just kind of thinking about that, like at first glance, my thought is kind of, at this stage when things aren't codified and you don't really have a system for training and you don't have like a training methodology, it seems like it's improvement if you are learning as a team how to train, how to learn in a funny way.
Yeah. I guess the other distinction too is like there's training, like transferring knowledge from one team member to another. And then there's training like one of your team members going out and learning a new thing that no one else in the organization knows. Right. And sometimes there's overlap. Anyway, yeah, it all seems very fuzzy, sort of gray area.
I would also say there's some element of like, we're obviously figuring out this stuff, all of this out live, very live. Like, it doesn't feel to me like our culture is exactly where it needs to be to have this process sort of be self-perpetuating, or do you know what I mean? Like, we're not like in a steady state of continuous change, if that makes any sense. We're still learning about how
chaotic
to
and
no, but like I think we're still wrestling with the ideas of like what counts, what should we be focused on in that hour a day, what just generally what is making the biggest differences, like all this stuff. You know, we don't have SOPs on every process. We don't have a standard way of making SOPs. We don't. It's all very, very live, let's say. And so I feel like
it's a living document.
Well, I just feel like the big distinction for me in small businesses, and just from what I've seen running a few of my own businesses and just working with other people, it is very easy to not even have the thought of like, is this improvement? Is it not improvement? Like, even that is a distinction. And then on top of that, even just like a real focus on shipping work or a focus on the future of where you want your business to be. Yeah. And so I don't know. I guess I'd be curious to hear people's thoughts, whether that should count into your hour, if it is an hour, whatever or whether that's something different. But it is definitely like, for you, it does seem like, you know, Eliyahu Goldratt, you know,
theory of constraints,
improve the bottleneck, like you've sort of had for months and months, like programming as a bottleneck. Yeah. And you've alleviated that through training.
To an extent. Yeah. We're
maybe
working on
not,
it. Yeah.
Maybe not a done deal, but so anyway, I don't know.
Yeah. Or like, you know, anyway, it's a very funny thing. 'Cause like you could also alleviate a bottleneck simply by purchasing or, you know, rearranging.
Right. I don't know if it's very different than equipment. I mean, humans obviously are different than equipment in certain ways.
You heartless man.
But like, if we were talking about like a table saw, and it's sort of like teaching a table saw new tricks, and then that alleviates the bottleneck, I feel like we'd both be in agreement that is.
Here's how you cut off a thumb and a finger.
Exactly. No more bottleneck. Yeah, so it does seem like training people would be that. It's also really solving, or like if someone's out sick or something, like it's really making your systems more robust.
It's all a bit semantic, but I think it is. I mean, it's incredibly semantic in the sense that like obviously you're improving the business when you're like training new people. I think the only reason we bring it up, or I thought of bringing it up, is because like, you know, you've talked about these distinctions between like developing new product. Is that an improvement or is that a core business function?
Right.
And I think there are times when it's good to make these distinctions and not be like,
agreed.
I think I'm really improving the business, but actually I'm just kind of like moving things sideways or coasting and don't realize it.
Even just in terms of understanding whether you're at capacity or not, because actually to have a healthy business, you are going to need, like, it would be a big competitive advantage given your geographic location and whatnot to have a good way of training people.
Yes, this is true.
And so
by that, Uriel means that we don't have a lot of people available out in the States
who are good machinists right off the bat. And so in that way, it would be a mistake probably to set it aside as like, oh, let's improve. Like maybe that time is sort of building training decks and then improving the training decks. I guess a training deck is sort of an SOP for maybe a core business function. I don't know. Anyway.
If anyone has a magic,
that's an interesting one,
indisputable answer, right in.
Yeah.
Should we jump into some of your juicy topics?
Yeah, so I have two. I think one is juicier than the other, so let's do the less juicy one first.
Okay.
Kanban. And so there's an issue with Kanban that I was hearing Jay Pearson and Andrew Henry talk about on their Lean Built podcast.
Yep.
Which was basically that as you're growing, a Kanban is meant to have a minimum that is set to allow you to continue production until your replenishment shipment arrives, whether that's internal or external, doesn't really matter. So if we ship 10 belts a day, we need 20 screws. And if it takes 4 days for McMaster to deliver the screws, then we should have 80 screws on hand, which means our minimum should be set at 80 if we're feeling super aggressive.
Yeah.
And maybe at like 100 or 120.
If you're sane.
Yeah. And so that's fine until you suddenly go like, okay, actually we're going to manufacture 50 belts a day.
Yeah.
And now your 80 screws represent under 1 day of production.
Yeah.
And there's no way of sort of forward-lookingly, which is a word, like deal with that problem. And so instead what happens, unless you're proactive in your thinking, but this is not what we want to be focused on, you find that Kanban and then you go, oh, we're screwed. Or not screwed, actually.
We are in an absence of screws.
Yeah. And so I've sort of been thinking about how to deal with that. I actually just sent you a text this morning as the person who cuts our stock because we had the same issue in stock, which is like when we set those quantities, I thought we would produce X amount and suddenly we're producing a lot more.
Yeah.
And we are out of stock. So, and so I've sort of been trying to figure out a mechanism that could be built into Kanban to run those updates. They could be automatic or not. I mean, this is sort of a reason people sometimes decide to go to an ERP, because an ERP can kind of figure all this out theoretically. I mean, practically too, but it has other issues.
Yeah.
So I'll just run the ideas I've had so far, and maybe you can be like, yes, no. So one idea is to put a Kanban
scorecards over here.
Okay, a few ideas. One is write a date every time they're ordered, or every time it's triggered, and next to the minimum quantity, write a duration, right? That quantity is meant to allow for.
Okay.
And so suddenly when you reorder it, you can look at the date and be like, oh, this is meant to be a 4 days of production, that's not correct anymore. And so you can update it when you go to order something.
Yeah, sorry, should I jump in or wait till they're all?
I don't know, you decide.
That seems very good as a person like yourself, who knows a lot about the overarching process,
right? And
knows what 4 days of production in screws is. If it's not you, I very much doubt that person, let's say it's someone who just came in that day, it's their first day of work.
Yeah.
They will not have, unless there's some other document there that's a comparison, they won't have any way of knowing that that's not an accurate or appropriate number, and it's going to require a lot of thinking to figure out what that new number should be.
That is true. That seems solvable, though I can't think of exactly how it would be solved.
Yeah.
Like you write the date it was ordered, and you could put all that information there.
Yes.
Of like, here's the math to figure out the new quantity and how many should be ordered. Anyway, so that's one thought. And maybe there's some of each of these. The other is to put another Kanban that's a different color at the end of your stock. So that if you ever do run out, it at least triggers a real examination and not just like a go into firefighting mode, deal with the problem, get more ordered, but nothing ever happens to the Kanban.
Yeah.
And then another option is to have safety stock.
Yeah.
Right. And so it could be that other color Kanban, but followed by more stock. And that triggers a hard look at all the processes.
Yeah. That would be my first thought. Or I think you could potentially have like yellow card, red card kind of thing.
Oh, like both.
Yeah. And it could be at the end of the stock. Whether there's safety stock or not seems like sort of beside the point a little bit.
Right.
And, like obviously could be good to have the safety stock just for, but it's besides the point of this question. And if you have you can have a yellow card first, and it's like you pull that and it's like, okay, this product ran out once. That could be a fluke. But then if it happens again, you pull the red card. It's like, this has happened twice.
How do you track whether, because the yellow card is gone?
Well, presumably that card has to go somewhere. So you have to have like
a process.
Yeah. For capturing, the yellow card has been taken to wherever. Now the red card gets taken probably to the ordering area, wherever that may be. You're like, okay, this product has now ran out twice, or, you could, whatever. This could be 3 different things, 3 different cards of varying levels of immediacy or, importance. Right. To trigger that thinking. And I bet in that process you could build in a way to do the new ordering math like with that information. Right. Like
that's sort of the thought is like, okay.
If the date that it ran out, the date the yellow one was, here's how it could be. Okay. Sorry.
Brainwave.
On the fly.
Yeah.
If you had multiple safety stocks that were not the same quantity as your normal Kanban quantity. Like say, I think a smaller quantity. Okay. And each one had a card that was a value, say we'll have a yellow card or like a green card, a yellow card, a red card. Okay. And let's say each quantity is 20 or something. Mm-hmm. If you run out of stock, you pull the first 20 and you mark the date. And then if you run out of that stock, you pull the next card and you mark the date. Okay. And then if you run out of that stock, you pull the next card and you mark the date. And in theory, that should give you an idea of your actual cadence of your actual consumption.
Right. That's an interesting idea. And then at every stage, so if you pull the green card, that's normal operation, but you still write the date. Then if you pull the yellow card, you would already want to compare those dates and make an update to the green card.
Is the green card your standard Kanban card?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like...
And then if you hit the red one, you really, really need to update the green card and maybe the yellow card?
Yeah. Well, it seems like updating the yellow card quantities would be part of this whole reassessment process.
Right.
Like they would be a percentage of the total quantity or something.
Yeah, it feels to me like this is a solved problem, and I just don't know how it's been solved.
Probably.
Like, maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like... I mean, obviously, like, production leveling is also a thing.
Yeah.
And so this is a failure because of a lack of leveling. But I don't see a way for me at my scale to solve that. Like, when there are... When publications cover our products, we get a very substantial bump in sales. I don't think I'm going to ask them to stop publishing stuff about our product in the interest of production leveling. Well, I mean, I have to some extent. Like, I always try to make sure that publications aren't all coming out at one time.
Yeah.
Ideally, unless it's a product launch, in which case they're all coming out at one time.
It seems like we're talking about two slightly different problems here. Production leveling is one. Obviously, they're related.
Yeah.
But then there's like the gutter company methodology to deal with spikes. Like, you don't necessarily want your Kanban quantities to be able to deal with every spike. Like, you want your Kanban quantity.
That's the thing, right?
You want your Kanban quantity to match your consistent flow.
Yes, but what is consistent? Is that on a month-to-month basis, or is that like 12 months divided by 12? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Our fourth quarter is always busier.
Right. Well, there you go.
Do we size all of our Kanban for the fourth quarter? Do we go through the whole shop and rewrite whatever 200 Kanban for production in the fourth quarter and then bring them back down? Do we introduce... We've had this thing that we use sometimes, which is a very useful tool, but I'm not sure it's kosher. Yeah. Which is sort of like temporary Kanban. So, like, if there's a really big order, we don't actually want to, for a particular color set, we don't actually want to bring our Kanban... quantities up for that whole color, so we just issue these like different color Kanbans onto the production floor. Like, just trigger a lot more production. Yeah, I don't know, but like it feels to me like we need a built-in system for understanding the interval between triggers and making sure that that is still appropriate given the built-in assumptions with Kanban, which is a particular production cadence. Yeah. And like, these are all very simple numbers. Right? So like, every time you order, you should be able to say, okay, last time, like, this, our minimums and our inventory that we hold represent 4 weeks typically. Yeah. I'm making that up. Sure. Now, if you order something and you're like, oh, that was 2 weeks ago, we ordered that last, maybe that triggers something. I don't know. I feel like right now I do all this stuff in my head. Yeah. Which is great that I can, but it's not great that I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so there's also backing up and saying, so there's two sort of cases here, right? There's the one case, which is demand increasing. Yes. Unpredictably, somewhat. Right. There's the other case, which was and this was relative to demand, but you deciding to increase your production cadence. Totally. So
that was due to demand, so I'm not sure
due to demand. Separate. But if you're saying we're going to restructure production, I think that's also a touch point to say we should probably reevaluate our Kanban, not wait for them to
I agree, but it just starts to feel like, I hate to say this on this podcast, but it just starts to feel like Kanban, like a huge flaw. To then have to seek out, because we don't have like a complete list, and maybe that's the answer, is we need a complete list of Kanban that's like tagged with all the projects they touch or something. And then you can search a particular tag and be like, okay, that production is up, let's redo all of those. But then are you going all through the shop and moving them and then triggering ones that weren't triggered before, right? Like, it just seems really labor intensive, but also really essential. So I essentially did that like mentally with the belt, because we launched and then I realized we sort of underestimated demand. And so then I went through sort of in my head, I was like, okay, we need shipping supplies. Do we have enough? No, we need to order more. Okay, let me expedite that. And we need, and I sort of went through all the things and I missed one, two actually. And so we're dealing with that. Anyway, like, and then like Pearson was basically saying with the growth they had, it became such a pain. Every time they trigger one, it was sort of like, well, this isn't right. Like it's calling for production of 50, but really we need 100. And that was just on all the time. So, I mean, the other option, which I've sort of been thinking about, like Toyota took 10 years before they started talking externally about lean or about TPS.
Yeah.
And so I've sort of been wondering, at what point is like idealism not sensible for me? So, for example, I need to order more screws. It's $4 for 100 screws.
Yeah.
Do I order just enough for replenishing in 4 days? Or do you just go like, it doesn't take up any space. Yeah. They're fully returnable for years for cash.
Yeah.
Like, who cares, right? Let me just order a whole bunch. Obviously, that doesn't solve the problem of replenishment. So I still need a Kanban there. But let me just like order $40 of screws, right?
Right.
And I'll have 2 weeks of production sitting there, and I'll have a trigger at 1 week or trigger at 2 weeks even. And who cares if $40 is sitting on the shelf? Now, I can tell you who cares is that if you push that out across the whole organization, you're going to have thousands of dollars and a ton of wasted space and spoilage when someone drops the bin of screws and they go flying everywhere. Or on Lean Made Simple, they talked about getting a bulk deal on printing brochures. And then they made edits, but they had so many of them, and then the roof leaked right onto them. So that's like a classic example.
I mean, it seems like balancing idealism is something we'll always be struggling with.
Yeah. I just feel like there's so many things internally that we could really focus on and have full control over.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Versus
just like saving money and space on screws.
Yeah.
And again, screws being an example where like we have a small shop, but we have enough space to store a lot of screws.
Yeah.
They're very small. Not trying to brag, but it's just what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I think like me sitting here doing this podcast, like I want to figure out the problem.
Yeah.
You actually running your business somewhere in the middle, I think, is a good idea.
You like keep chewing on it, but also maybe order 400 screws.
Yeah, that's what I think I would do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like have some safety stock so you can keep shipping product.
Yeah, and then Eliyahu Goldratt, again, in the essay after that's tacked onto the back of
the goal,
he talks about, in his paradigm, he recommends holding a lot of stock at the head of your production line.
Yeah.
Partially because that's his method for suppressing overproduction is the release of stock, but also partially because you're so screwed if you run out of stock.
Yeah.
Now, Toyota would tell you that is a great opportunity to fix the problem of running out of stock. Like, why did you run out of stock?
Yeah. But also you have a business to run.
Yeah.
I was thinking back to your, whether you're trying to size this for peak demand or for the year as a whole.
Right.
And so the question kind of becomes, do you update all your Kanban quantities for internal processes to hold safety stock at each step?
Yeah.
Or do you just hold a bunch of safety stock of raw materials at the head of the process so you can at least whether it's you being up till 1 a.m. or theoretically having a second shift, like when things kick into high gear,
you just
figure out how to make more stuff with the current paradigm.
Right, because then you are storing stuff, but at least it's the least investment you can have in that stuff.
Yeah.
And still have it be available.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thought. Right. Have your safety stock be at the head of like raw material, externally supplied materials.
Yeah.
I think is kind of what we're saying.
Yeah. And like the internal external thing seems pretty key. We've been thinking a lot this last week about bringing anodize in again for this reason.
Mm-hmm.
It throws such a wrench in our schedules. We have no control over the quality.
Right.
And if we're trying to be relatively just in time or working with customers who have short lead times,
that'd be a huge value add.
It'd be a huge value add / just like stress reducer on our end. Like we get these jobs and we're like, okay, this isn't actually that challenging of a job. Whatever, we have 3 weeks to get it done. Because of the anodizing schedule, it ends up being like a severe rush.
Interesting.
because we have to get material in immediately, make the parts, get them out so that we can get them back, quality control them, and get them delivered.
Well, that's another brutal part about anodizing is that when they send it to you, then you QC them only then. So you've lost 3 days in shipping.
At least.
And then you have to start the process over potentially.
Yeah, and on some of these projects we're working on, like, that's a no-go. And we had some stuff this last week where the customer accepted it. Like, there was damage from how they were handled.
Brutal.
Customer was like, yeah, that's okay, but let's not have it happen again.
And you're like, I can't promise that.
Yeah, no, but we had to email them and be like, hey, like, this can't happen. Like, we can pay more. This part is like the cost of the delay and is not worth whatever cost savings.
Generally in coding, it seems to me, and this is not a hot take, but it just seems like the relative value add compared to the cost of the thing it's on is a really tough spot.
Yes.
Because you're kind of like, no one really wants to charge what it costs to be extremely careful.
Yeah.
Essentially.
I think it's a very hard business to be in if you're trying to do that.
Yeah.
Because it relies on volume. Basically.
Well, we are also talking about bringing anodize in-house, so
yeah,
maybe we'll.
It's also almost always at the very end of the product cycle,
right?
And so you take all of this invested work and then maybe destroy it.
And the worst part, a really frustrating part is that there's no okay, well, we messed up, but at least now we can eliminate that as a potential issue from ever happening again. Yeah. It's like, nope.
It's out of your hands pretty much.
Yeah. Play Russian roulette again.
Yeah. Why are we talking about that? Oh, just where you keep your excess stock and
an internal versus external.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Because we can have hard days or hard weeks or work on a weekend or something.
Yeah.
But you can't do anything if you're just out of the material. And
The question of updating your quantities remains.
It sure does.
But I do think there are probably some pretty simple ways to handle that.
What if we instead moved to a time element on the reorder quantities?
Well, don't you already have that if you're recording dates?
Well, but I'm saying instead of listing minimum quantity 100, what if you said minimum quantity 3 days?
Oh, and then
every time you sort of have to derive it. You could say minimum quantity 3 days, and then put parentheses this quantity.
Everybody's just going to ignore the 3 days.
What if you said this quantity per day, and then you have to do the math? But then, you have to update the quantity per day. So really, you need the quantity per day to live somewhere else, which is a big board in the shop that tells everyone sort of what production numbers you're trying to hit.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool idea.
Because we do have that. Well, now that I'm saying that, we don't have it written on a board. It is a number we circulate in our morning meeting, but I should really write on the board.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, that'd be cool. You could have a multiplier for how many per unit and how many days supply you want to have.
Yeah.
It might get a little tedious. You'd have to have that information close by.
Well, so now that we're moving over to Coda, this does open up this can of worms that I'm a little nervous about, which is that scope creep basically of ooh, this is a computer. It can do data fast. Because we could put how many days we want, and then we could have a cell when you reorder that's sort of what's your production rate or something, or it could have historical data of when we ordered it last, and it could know how many days that should have lasted us, and then it could update accordingly.
Yep.
But it starts to feel very much I don't know.
If you know your production rate and you know your multiplier per unit.
Yeah.
It seems like you could make this pretty straightforward and still keep it analog.
Yeah.
Without getting too overly complicated with computers possibly ordering 6,000 screws by accident, or whatever, or not enough, or 6 screws.
For sure.
When you wanted 6,000 screws.
Yeah, that's real.
But yeah, it seems like just getting those pieces of information to the right places so that you can do the math quickly and easily to place your order.
Yeah. I mean, I know we're not meant to rely on people super a lot, but it does also feel like we try to hire smart people. And so you could, just by having it's meant to last this many days.
Yeah.
You could sort of right? Like I could imagine going like, oh, here it says to reorder 100, then being like, wait a second, we're making 60 a day. Like that's not 3 days anymore. I'm going to order 180.
Yeah, I think you just got to think forward to the fact when like person ordering might not have any idea how many you make per day.
Yeah, but that's why this is continuous improvement.
Yeah.
We'll figure that out then. No, you're right. Okay, so the other thing, which I think is a lot juicier, well, I mean, they're both interesting.
Apparently that was juicy.
It is, so we've been reading lean books for a number of years now. They all talk about flow, reducing batch sizes, how that increases throughput.
It all sounds really cool.
It's very cool. You're like, that doesn't quite make sense. Sure. Okay. So we actually did it in a way which I thought we were doing it, which is why it was so weird. It was like, okay, so here's sort of what happened. We grossly underestimated the demand for the belt, and then also grossly underestimated how different production would be with
larger parts.
Even though they're not that much larger, they're larger enough. So instead of getting 120
like
parts,
4 times the size.
Yeah, I just didn't think about it. Right. Yes, 100%. And then the way we're racking them takes up even more space. So instead of getting 120 parts in the oven in one go, we're getting 20 parts in the oven, and those parts were really packed in there. And so I kept touching them to each other, and it was very demoralizing and really bad for production. And so we were like throttled to like, at the end of the day, being able to ship like 15 belts in a day. I mean, this didn't go on for days and days. This went on for a day, and I was like, well, this is a huge problem I have to solve. And so then I was kind of like, okay, I need to increase the density and increase the reliability of the process in terms of like not scrapping stuff. So I built these trays to hold the racked parts. That worked nicely. Each tray holds 10 of each part, so 10 total buckle assemblies, and then I can squeeze 4 of those into the oven. So 40 a day is a great increase, but I was kind of like, okay, we also probably need a bigger oven or something, or 2 ovens, something. Yeah. So we can just do a lot more per day. And so I was shopping around for new equipment.
You called me. I was like, buy a second oven.
Yeah, I called a bunch of other people.
No, I'm lean.
They're like, buy a second oven. I looked for ovens. I reached out to some people on Craigslist. And then I was like, man, I have to run wires. Like, that's not super quick, and we're sort of under the gun. Then I was kind of like just gaming it out. I was like, wait a second. It takes me 40 minutes to paint the first tray. That goes in the oven. I paint the second. If that goes in the oven immediately, reducing our batch size from 40 down to 10. If that goes in and we start a clock, when the second tray is ready to go in the oven, the first tray's been in there for 40 minutes, third tray is at 80 minutes. Once I paint the fourth tray at 120 minutes, the first tray is ready to come out of the oven. Yeah. So suddenly we can continuously flow parts through the oven and just have 10 ready for paint every hour. Yeah. Which suddenly is attack time across the shop. And so now I was in that. So we started doing that, and then I realized partway through painting tray 1 that the parts in the CNC we needed to start passing to the next process, not waiting for the whole batch to be done. So I started interrupting the machine every 10 parts and passing them to degrease so that we could start flowing them through the system. Yeah. So very quickly, by eliminating batching in that process, I didn't realize this, like it started sort of like highlighting how batched the whole
thing actually
production plant thing. Yeah. Like it's very much not flowing. Like, yes, our batch sizes are small, and yes, we do a lot of changeovers, but it's not flowing. Right. Like there's a difference between small batches and flow. Yeah. And flow is sort of like the next process needs parts. Are you going to be ready to provide them? No. That's a problem. And so it started triggering, like highlighting issues with production that were preventing flow, which is something all the books talk about, right? Yeah. Yeah. And you're like, yes, I get that. It was just really eye-opening and very exciting to see.
Well, it's funny when you actually sit down and do the math. You're like, I understand this concept. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, that much faster. Really?
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, it's crazy. So like today, so our goal is now 60 per day instead of 10. We have yet to hit that goal.
Yeah.
But we are like today, I'm guessing we'll be at like 50. Yesterday, I'm thinking we were around 30-ish. So we're like on the right trajectory.
Yeah.
And it's really highlighting a lot of problems. So one of the things I had to do was, maybe not had to, but I ordered a bunch of timers. So each process, like degrease, we had one timer. And so now you put one batch in, you set the timer. Yeah. But now you can't flow through that bath because you want a timer for each. Each batch. And then similarly at the gas out oven, like now we want to turn the oven on and then just load it as parts are coming out of the sandblast. And actually we accidentally batched the stuff coming out of sandblast, just sort of old habits die hard. And so I came down looking for parts. Like I was done with the parts, with painting parts. I needed more parts. I came down and there was like 15 minutes on the timer, but I saw there were 2 batches in there. It's kind of like, did these get started? So they got batched instead of the second one was done. And the time, the sandblast cabinet takes about 15 minutes. So if those had been flowed instead of batched, I would have had parts on time.
Wow.
It was wild. So it increased our production substantially. And then it also has just really highlighted like sort of these speed bumps in our flow. The other cool part that I've experienced inadvertently is it was pretty exciting working that day. It really felt like we were like riding a wave. It was like, can we stay on this wave? And we couldn't.
Right.
But like, it was fun.
And probably with some targeted thinking about like what the sequencing needs to be, you potentially could.
Yeah, and like the tact time, just that tact time falling out of all this has really changed my thinking across the shop. Where suddenly you're like, no, our tact time is 1 hour, so we need to match. How do we match that tact time? And processes that aren't need to be addressed because it really messes up everything, and it drives the need to hold a lot more inventory so that we can flow it to our bottleneck, which is fine. Like we'll do that. But I'd rather not do that. And then. I don't know. It was really interesting to see the difference between like flow and I don't know what we were doing before.
Right.
It wasn't flow.
Well, you were still
It was
batching.
flow in these small cells, but they weren't linked. And we started linking them, I guess, is what we did. Yeah. And the improvements felt much more...
Were you really linking them or just synchronizing them? Which is maybe the same thing, but slightly different.
Yeah, we still had flow where you, what is it? Flow where you can.
Pull where you must.
Pull where you must. We were still pulling. Like between Kanban loops, but yeah, I guess we were synchronizing them. And we didn't have buffers. Not on purpose, but we didn't have buffers.
Right, you were, pulling exactly when... You were pulling from the prior process as soon as it was done. Essentially,
yeah. And like I think a lot of our sort of speculation, what I'm sort of maybe realizing is a lot of our sort of hemming and hawing about like how much should we improve and what should we improve. It felt a lot more concrete because it's like, oh, that thing there messed us up yesterday. Right? Like we all had to stop and go look at it. How can we fix that?
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, oh, yeah, we could make it like less motion or, which I think inevitably is going to also exist, right?
Sure.
Like, let's say we get everything flowing pretty decently.
Yeah.
We're going to have days where nothing breaks completely. It's more just like, oh.
Yeah.
On the Lean Made Simple podcast, he was talking about having an ex-CEO from Lexus through the plant or something like that.
Okay. I didn't listen to that one yet. I don't
And they had noticed that like they focused on one part and that part gets lifted something like 11 times before they mount it on the product to ship. And they were trying to get that down to 3. Right. So there's always more fine tuning to be done for sure.
Yeah.
That is probably not like, hey, that's messing up flow. It's just a huge waste.
Right.
But still, yeah, it was pretty fun. It was very interesting to see. Yeah. So
I'm trying to think about how we can apply these concepts in our business. I feel like we're a little lost in the woods at the moment with just like kind of like we have like everybody's trying to sort of figure out their new like responsibilities in place as we brought on new people, and also like our work mix is very different right now than it has been for a while. And so I think there's a lot of like, for at least for me and for I think for everybody to some extent, like, what am I doing today? Like,
right.
And how, what's going where, how, who?
So the other thing I saw that was interesting is this idea of like reducing whip and shifting people through the process. Like, because I knew the tact time, I knew I could look at a clock and figure out where things were meant to be.
Yeah.
So like if I was done painting at 35 minutes instead of 40 minutes, I would go down and make sure that like machining was taken care of.
Yeah.
See if I could like lend a hand on production, on the assembly. So that was really interesting.
It does, like, I'm sitting here feeling envious because it sounds like really fun to have.
Yeah.
Like, I know that, like, I mean, you call it a flow state for a reason, right?
Right.
And like when you're kind of dancing in this like complex process, like that is why I used to like really love to run multiple machines at once. And that was kind of my happy place. Be like, okay, that one's going to stop in 30 seconds. I'm going to go, I'm going to deburr this. I'm going to walk over there and I'm going to loosen that vise. So I'm going to pick that up. And I don't get much of that these days.
And then you can sit there for like over lunch and you're kind of like, oh, if I could eliminate my walk from there to there, suddenly, So I don't know. Yeah. What is the thing that was holding me back? I guess would sort of be the question.
Before?
Yeah. And I think it was having a process that was extremely batchy, didn't let anything flow.
Or
right.
It wasn't like, it didn't require it to flow. So you weren't.
It didn't require it to flow. And like right now I'm painting like 3 or 4 hours a day. Whereas normally I paint 1 hour a day.
Yeah.
And so it's not, I don't know what the word is. It's definitely making me want to get that paint robot going.
Yeah.
Because that would be huge. But I think like the tact time previously was like a day actually. Right? We were like, okay, let's have parts ready to paint for today. And let's have the painted parts come to the assembly area today.
Yeah.
Whereas now our tact time is like a fraction of the day.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the difference.
Interesting.
So I wonder what your tact time is. I mean, there isn't one really, right? Because every job is a little different.
Yeah, I think we have to like think about it in a different manner.
Right.
I don't know what that manner is yet.
Neither do I.
I mean, we still arrive and leave on a daily basis. So I would like to try and work around a day as some kind of a...
I feel like a day works.
It does. But I don't know what exactly to organize within that because, it is... I think I just haven't really put the thought towards it right yet for what this kind of new system looks like.
Yeah. Someone made the comment to me that I think sort of landed a little bit that I sort of wrote off. Eloquently, I will say.
No. You wrote it off eloquently?
Yeah, like it made sense what I said, but I think I'm not sure that's true. Josh at the Holstery was basically like, well, you don't flow because you don't have each process manned.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that.
Sure.
Like, I don't think I sort of said, well, you're never going to have every process manned. Right? Because if people are doing more than one task, which is common, then not every process is manned. But really, the question is like, are all the processes
manned enough?
Manned enough to be sort of all running and like doing this like every tact time interval passing one unit of production, one batch.
Right.
Either that's a batch of 1 or 10 or 1,000.
Right.
Is everyone passing something all the time?
Yeah.
Or working on something to pass?
That seems like
something like that.
That's the big nut that you've cracked, is like figuring out sort of what your appropriate batch size is that the two of you can actually move through on a consistent basis.
Yeah. And I do have one little secret, which is that we had a third person. yesterday.
Tiny little secret.
Today we didn't, and we're still able to do it.
Uh-huh.
But it was really nice having a day of sort of a little excess capacity to see what needed to happen when.
Yeah.
And to kind of be able to study that a little bit. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, so that was it. It was very exciting. It was, I feel like I was completely blind to the possibility.
Uh-huh.
And then we were doing it, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
This is flow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So it was all the classic things. It was like process synchronization. It was reducing batch sizes. And that all increased our production without any more equipment and theoretically any more manpower.
Yeah.
Yeah, just 50% more manpower.
That's all.
No, but today we did do the same scheme, and it worked well.
Yeah. Well, that's so cool that it worked in practice, not just in theory. I mean, we sort of expected it, but...
Well, sort of, but it was still surprising and eye-opening. When I first made... I probably told you this, but, you know, I had been dreaming of better buckles for years.
Yeah.
And then I spent 6 months working on this buckle because I was like, I'm tired of retightening my bike packing gear when I'm bike packing.
Yeah.
And I finally got some made and sewed them onto some gear and went bike packing. And I was like, holy shit. Like, this totally does. Like, it was still surprising to me how nice it was, even though I clearly had put a lot of thought into like how much I want to solve this problem. Then when it was solved, I was like, yeah, it was kind of mind blowing. Similarly, yeah, we've read the books and we've talked about flow ad nauseum, and then seeing it, you're like, huh. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So I don't need another oven.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Now I want a tunnel oven. That's what I want.
Yeah, I was just imagining your robot like painting one part at a time.
So good.
Through a tunnel.
Yeah, it's just crazy now seeing it. I'm like, I am putting parts on a tray that then sit there for 40 minutes before getting put in the oven.
Yeah.
And if I just match the takt time of the assembly station per belt, and I can easily match that.
Yeah. And you could pretty easily probably synchronize single piece all the way back through up to the CNC, and theoretically even the CNC at some point.
Even the CNC, if I could get the parts out easily.
That'd be very cool.
And they just immediately dropped into a degreaser, and then had a robot that timed that and immediately passed it to the rinse and to the drying.
Could it be one robot?
Through the whole process?
Yeah.
With a long enough rail, it definitely could be. Or
in a circle?
In a circle, like all the way through paint.
Yeah.
Challenge accepted. Interesting.
Because a lot of those are unmanned, right? They like batch, or not, if it's like in there for 15 minutes or something.
Sorry, what is in where?
Like it's in degrease for several minutes. It's in this, so like the robot could put it in and then go do something else and then come back. That'd be cool.
And then I can finally realize the dream of walking up to the barn and putting a block of aluminum in one hole and getting a buckle out of another hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, that dream.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up.
Thanks all so much for listening. We really appreciate all the feedback and the support. We have a Patreon.
We do.
Go check it out if you would. And review us on whatever platform you're listening to this on. It really helps other people find it.
Yep.
Yada yada. Every podcast says, it's true. So yeah, if you want to help us out, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yep.
You can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram and austeremfg.com on the internet.
You can find me at likenprecision.com on the internet, lichen_MFG on Instagram, and the pod at incremental CI.
Talk to you later.
Adios.